Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Peter coming at you through the tubes of the internet. Today, taking a look at the latest release from $, an album called This Will Haunt Me. I'm excited to discuss and glad you could join.
Fast Facts.
This Will Haunt Me, released July 13th, 2018 via AF Records, is the second studio LP from Charlotte, North Carolina-based punk band $. The group currently consists of 5 members: frontman Eric Button, Dylan Wachman on bass, Aaron Chamberlain drumming, Luke Gunn handling horns and synth, and Tommy McPhail playing lead guitar.
Backstory.
$signs have been making spazzy punk rock for the better part of a decade, starting as the acoustic bedroom project of singer-lyricist Eric Button and evolving into their current full band form. The group has self-recorded tunes and EP odds and ends dating back as far as 2011. Previous $signs releases saw the band borrowing heavily from folk punk contemporaries bomb the music industry, both sonically and thematically, and that trend continues on This Will Haunt Me. This new record features punchier and more dynamic instrumentation, but still finds the band struggling to carve out their own distinct sound. Despite that ongoing hang-up, there's a lot to love about $'s latest offering. Button brings some of his wittiest lyrics to the table to further discuss the balancing act between a wild and crazy punk lifestyle and the mundane reality of day-to-day life, all the while considering the toll both of these factors take on his mental state. Lots of humor and bursts of insight commingle on an album that seems chaotic but ends up building to notions of personal growth and works well as a coherent set of tunes.
Track-by-track analysis.
This release has 11 tracks and clocks in at 29 minutes. There's tons of variation in the sounds on the record, both from track to track and often even within the same song via key or tempo changes. $signs keep things extremely fresh for this half-hour runtime while also managing to weave in some ongoing thematic threads and circling back to reprise musical elements too.
Track 1, Cry Hard.
Now I burst into tears every time you turn around.
A pretty straightforward intro to the album. The bulk of this cut's just a list of things that spark crying fits in singer Eric Button. There's external triggers like nostalgic songs or public radio broadcasts, and lots of personal interactions listed that bring about these intense waves of emotion. The sheer length of the list makes it clear how Button gets down on himself about every embarrassing thing he's ever done, and there's a line in the song that states the same sentiment. The track starts with some great gang vocal lines about how these feelings used to be suppressed, but now clearly the floodgates are open and they've all come pouring out in a torrent. The driving, in-your-face instrumentation matches this feeling. It's a good way to start the album that puts some mental anguish on display in an upbeat way.
Track 2, Til Death.
'Cause it's wedding upstate.
This cut's set at a family wedding where Button dreads small talk with relatives and pressures to commit to his girlfriend. I like how it cleverly uses the wedding vow of "I do" to express how Button wants to leave and get wasted, but overall this track doesn't really grab me. It's a short and simple track at just 2 minutes, and it seems like a lot of the runtimes use building to this line,
Always the drunk, never the groom.
which comes across kinda clunky. He parlays it into a great line about doing the electric slide, and the song ends with a funny sample from the cha-cha slide, but overall just not one of my favorites.
Track 3, Shallow Pop Songs.
All I talk about is the weather.
Here Button discusses actively avoiding things that make him think about the harsh realities of life. He chooses to occupy his headspace with trivial minutiae like hot dog classifications instead of thinking of anything consequential. The titular pop songs essentially drown out anything else racing through his head. And halfway through, the track drops into a big chugging breakdown with some pretty hilarious lines about James Cameron's hypocrisy in Avatar, They're sent as text messages to a friend that hasn't been replying back, and Button's progressively getting more impatient for a response with some validation of his points, but comes to find out the person on the other end of the phone has committed suicide. It's a super heavy theme bundled in a light-hearted shell, an excellent cut with a lot going on musically.
And the last text I sent to him was about the movie Avatar.
Track 4, This Will Haunt Me.
When all your friends leave at one, you are left to get drunk with
A transitional track that calms things down a bit. Musical elements do the heavy lifting here, with the clean, pretty piano lead underpinned with rumbling, overdriven guitar chords. Backup vocals kick in when demons are mentioned in the lyrics and have a moaning, spooky quality. This track's strength is how the instrumental elements reiterate the isolation and torment of the vocals. The idea that most people are DJs who play back your past regrets on repeat works well, drudging up those old nostalgic songs that were mentioned earlier. A good track and a great synergy between music and lyrics.
Track 5, Uggghhhh.
Don't wanna turn into David who works in my office.
This cuts a cautionary tale about a coworker whose life's in shambles after his wife and kids have left him. He played it safe with a boring desk job, but still ended up a loser. Listening through without seeing the track list, I thought this was just an intro to the following song. This is a strange choice to separate into two discrete tracks, I think. Both are weaker without each other, which would easily happen if it's on shuffle or in a playlist. I don't know, easy thumbs down here. This song isn't particularly funny and seems kind of mean-spirited, actually. Definitely doesn't work on its own without Sadderday following it.
And he played it safe, but his life's still a wreck.
Track 6, Sadderday.
Paying off Christmas from 2 years ago.
This song finds Eric trapped in a cycle of wage slavery where he can't be a punk on the weekend because he's stuck at work. It's a simple song, but it does a good job of communicating the tedium of working constantly but never catching up with the debt you're buried under. I kind of wish a song like this would have taken a more overtly political stance, but it's still well done. I laughed out loud the first time I heard the line, "I'd rather go to church with my parents," and getting paid overtime to scheme murder fantasies towards your boss was a nice touch too. There's something really authentic about this tune coming from a band on this level of fame. The idea of drudging through a day job rings true in the way it wouldn't with a bigger act. Lots of funny lines and an energetic instrumental performance make this one a winner.
Track 7, The Devil Wears Flannel.
I just realized I'll never do anything great.
Tons of ambition on display here for the longest track on the record. This tune features a wide dynamic range of sounds, starting with some minimal acoustic noodling and building to a huge instrumental outro overdriven with a scorching guitar solo. And in between, it makes pit stops at doofy pop drivel and an amazing guest vocal performance for the role of the devil. Themes of inadequacy are pondered on the song. It's an age-old tale of selling your soul to the devil to make a lasting work of art. But once Button goes through the whole ordeal of setting up the dark rite, the song the devil offers up is hilariously bubblegummy. It reminds me of that old Garth Brooks SNL skit with the devil essentially saying,
Who fucking gives a rat's ass, Steve? Just write a love song.
I love that in the last verse, Button doesn't want to offend any Satanists, but he has to call the devil on his whack-ass lyrics. It's a great song overall. The ending especially rocks with its screeching tones for the guitar solo. Very cool stuff.
I wanna make something beautiful. I wanna make something real. Just give me a song with some lasting appeal. He said, hey, Eric, don't look so blue.
Track 8, Waste My Life Away.
Sorry, I'm such a shitty friend. I deserve every dick drawn on my head.
This one's the straight up party anthem of the record. Basically about a wild, manic night of excessive drinking, steamrolling someone else's birthday celebration by getting too belligerent. The track culminates in Button screaming, "I'm a lost cause, too much of a fuck up, I'm not worth your time," and instrumentally it rips, especially for that last minute. It's an extreme cut where the band indulges their totally rad dude aesthetic to the fullest. As the lead single of the album, I was kind of worried that this would be indicative of the entire release, but that's not really how it plays out in the context of the record. It's more like a final moment of childishness before the record takes a turn towards self-reflection. Button's made it clear how these out-of-control antics weigh on his mental state, and this is really apparent as the album moves into its third act. This track works well as one last hurrah before making changes toward personal betterment.
Track 9, Tears, Beers, Fears.
Everybody's having kids. I'm still ripping basement gigs.
This song feels like it's broken into two halves. Powered up pop punk for the first half that plays out in blasts of fits and starts, and then a progressively building breakdown for the whole second half. Lyrically, this track finds Button considering the divergent life paths before him, and coming to a realization that he needs to get his shit together regardless of which one he chooses. A minute into this song, the music drops out and the band starts layering on instruments one by one. The "I don't want to be 40" ending is perfect. Every line is worded exactly right in my opinion. This is the highest point on an album with lots of high points. The plinking xylophone, the way the guitar hits punctuate the vocal melody, the music just fills out in such a satisfying way. I love this track, one of the best on the record, and a great turn toward making better life decisions as a theme.
I don't be 40, singing songs about getting drunk at prom. I don't want to be 40 with a weird relationship with my dad and mom.
Track 10, I used to bury my feelings deep down inside of me.
I used to bury my feelings deep down inside of me. Bury my feelings.
For the most part, this is an instrumental reprise of the album's intro. Once again, it sounds great with the powerful gang vocals I mentioned earlier, but this time around, even though there's only one additional line of lyrics, it has huge impact. The solution to burying his feelings is right on. A super impactful tune for only being a minute, and thematically it works great for how the track list is winding down here.
But now I ask for help, 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 help.
Track 11, The Real Folk Blues.
Before the broken strings and the marketing.
One last goodie here to close out the album. Based on the idea that even if life for the band doesn't work out how he'd envisioned, it'd still be fine. I think the arc across the entire release ends up with Button in a really good place. Even if that means getting back to basics, just playing for himself in his room or at the open mic, the record really comes full circle in a satisfying way. It even ends back on similar chord progressions to how it starts, but after all that's happened musically in between, it seems fresh and new. It makes for a great transition into starting the album back up too, which I found myself wanting to do pretty often after listening through. The half-hour music here leaves you wanting more and loops back in on itself pretty seamlessly. A great ending to a great album.
That I die listening to a song I like, and I hope that I die listening to a song I like.
Verdict.
Overall, I ended up really digging this album. It has a slightly inconsistent first half, but once you hit track 6, it's rock solid the rest of the way through. My initial misgivings about things sounding too familiar were put to rest by the sheer quality of the record. Even taking that line of thought to its most cynical extreme and considering this a work of Jeff Rosenstock fan fiction, it's still a super capable execution of that sound and a ton of fun. The album has lots of heart and doesn't sacrifice the punk edge for its sentimentality. The growth on display late in the record is built towards in a really natural and believable way. For that reason, I'm going to give this album a score of 8 out of 10 and a big time thumbs up. It really impressed me. So that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on the record. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the release, my critique, or the review format in general. Making this is a lot of work, but also fun, and definitely worth it if it helps some people wrap their head around the record. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.
It's a series of tubes.